am Amanda Cotton with the Music City Lifestyle Group, and I have Whitney Koski, the lead agent, and Amy here from Movement Mortgage. And today we're going to tell you all about how you can use your equity in your current home to build your rental portfolio. Amy, tell us a little bit about how we can do that.
So there are a few different ways to tap into your equity in your current home. What we're seeing is so many people have great interest rates right now on their first mortgages and want to stay where they are and purchase investment instead of making moves for their primary, right? So we're going to tap into that equity. There's a couple of different ways. So those of you who may not know, equity is the difference in what your home is valued at and what you owe. So that difference is going to be your equity. You can tap into up to a certain percentage of that. We're starting to see more and more getting closer to 100% of that mark now. But 80 is pretty standard for most situations. But you can tap into that by either doing a cash out refinance, or you can do a home equity loan or line of credit. The cash out refinance option, you would pay off your first mortgage also and then pull additional cash. But the home equity loan or home equity line would allow you to leave your first mortgage in place and just pull the additional or the difference in the equity out on a separate line.
Okay, I think you've prepared a slideshow for us. Let me see if I can get it up so that we can share it. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Awesome. And guys, if you are watching this live, this is being recorded, so the participants are hidden. Just go ahead and type any questions you have in the comments and we will answer them. If you're watching our replay, then feel free to reach out to any of the three of us and we'll give you our contact information at the end. All right, so what is equity?
So that's what we were mentioning. So the equity is the difference in how much you owe and how much your home is worth. So whatever the market value is of your home today, less the amount of mortgage that you currently have, that is how much equity you have available to potentially tap into.
So Whitney, how do they find out from us what their equity is?
So we would run an market analysis on their property, and also can tell them based on their current payoff, what their net profit would be.
I mean, why does that help them in the process?
Because we want to know fair market value is what is going to determine the actual amount of equity that they have. So by you guys jumping in and kind of proactively running comps for them and figuring kind of what we anticipate that appraisal to come in at or what that appraised value to be, we can adequately plan for, you know, how much money we may have available to know how much we can pull and work and use toward purchasing something, using that money for down payment to purchase something new.
Awesome. Okay, so you tapped into this a little bit, but tell us what we're looking at here.
So obviously you can sell and pull your equity that way. We don't want you to do that. Again, we want you to stay where you are, keep that great interest rate, and let's just tap into the additional equity that you have available. So you could sell, but that's not what we're looking to do here. The cash out refinance is the other option. Like I mentioned, 80% is pretty typical. We do have some access now to a little bit higher than that if you qualify for that. So that is an option. A home equity line of credit, same. You can do a home equity line or loan typically up to the 80 to 90% mark. But again, we're seeing some opportunity to go a little bit higher than that today. Most home equity loans, though, if you're doing a true equity line, it is going to be not a fixed interest rate. So it's going to fluctuate a little bit. But you can use payoff and re-access that line of credit over and over again. So that makes that helpful if you are looking to, like we said, purchase investment properties to, whether it be to rent them, flip them, whatever that is, you pay that equity down, you can re-access that again. A 1031 exchange would allow you to sell one investment property, access that equity, and purchase another like or investment property to keep you from having any potential penalties or having to pay capital gains. We mentioned that because we talk about not selling, but if you're that would be for your primary residence, right? So, but if you have an investment property that you may want to be looking to go from a long-term investment to a short-term or a long-term rental investment property to maybe a short-term Airbnb, something like that, that could generate a little bit more revenue monthly, that's where you may consider that 1031 to go from, one type of investment property to another.
Great. So Amy, we know that we actually have a lot of different ways that we can use equity, but we also know that with any loan product, there are going to be some fees.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go in a little bit into what that looks like with each of these options?
Yes. So I believe I believe we have a slide for that just to kind of help follow along there. A cash out refinance, typically you pay, the closing costs are going to be standard for any refinance, pretty much whether it be a cash out refinance or you're just refinancing just your mortgage. So you can plan for 2.5% to 3% on average for closing costs for that option. The home equity line of credit, though, typically only has either a flat fee or up to 1% of the line of credit, and usually a good or majority of, or sometimes all of those costs are absorbed by the bank that you take out your line of credit with. So very, very little to sometimes no closing costs on those home equity loans.
So there's actually, it's actually very similar to the process of buying your primary home, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about this slide. What are we looking for? What kind of properties can we invest in? Is it just single family homes? Can we invest in townhomes, multifamily homes? Tell us what we're working with here.
So you can absolutely invest in all of those types of homes. You can do single family, you can do a duplex, you can do a triplex, or up to 4 units. You can finance on as a residential property. Above that would be commercial, and that gets you into a whole nother animal. But up to 4 units, you can absolutely you can finance up to 4 units at a time. So what that would mean is instead of just having one rental amount that you're collecting each month on a single family, you would actually have the potential for 2, 3, or 4 times that amount on a multifamily property. So I always recommend the first thing to figure out is what are our goals, right? Do we have a goal for short term? So we're looking for, and I don't mean short term rentals per se, I mean cash flow. Are we looking for the here and now, right? Do we want to make X amount of dollars a month to bring into our household as positive cash flow? Or is our goal more long term? Are we looking more for, okay, maybe we will, maybe we won't have a ton of positive cash flow on this property, but in 5 years, 10 years, however many years, 3 or whatever that number is for you, how much equity have you gained over that amount of time? So that could definitely change your view on what type of property you're looking for. And that's where you guys would come in, where's the best location for whatever it is that they're looking to do? Is it, short-term Airbnb rentals, or is it, we don't want to manage a bunch of property. I hear that a lot. I want to be an investor, but I don't want to manage property. So that would be kind of where you get into the more long-term game, right? So it's not so much about the daily, everyday, monthly, this is how much extra we're putting in the bank, but we're going to buy it today for this price because here's where prices are today. And in 5, 10 years, we're going to have a ton of equity built up. We may sell it and buy 4 more, or, whatever that looks like. But to know your goals, at least have a good game plan going into it so that you can know what type of property is best for you and what you're actually, what your short and long-term goals are to make sure you are jumping in at the right place, the right time, and with the right type of property.
It's amazing that there's just so many options. So what else can you tell us, Amy, that would help our clients or anyone on this call who is just getting their feet wet?
Yeah, I would say qualifying for a rental property is probably one of the, I don't want to say easiest, just for lack of better terms, because you essentially don't even have to qualify for that new payment, right? When you purchase a rental property, we are able to right out of the gate give you income, if you will, to help offset that payment. So it's not like I know people say, I want to buy one, but I would never qualify, or my income isn't high enough. If you qualify for what you currently own and your current debt, cars, loans, credit cards, things like that, you should qualify to also purchase a rental property, because effectively you're not taking on any more debt monthly in regard to how we calculate those numbers. So you don't have to make an extra $3,000 or $4,000 a month to be able to buy a rental property. Effectively, the goal is to have the rental property pay for itself, right? So when that happens, that amount is determined by the appraisal. So whatever the market rent is for any particular property, that is how much, we'll call it income, we can give you, or how much we can utilize to offset that payment. So effectively, you're really not even getting hit for a new payment, meaning you don't really have to make so much more money to qualify.
That's awesome. So we have a question in the chat here. I'm going to read it out loud and then I'm going to address it. But they're basically just asking, how do we determine what the market rent is? And the same way that Whitney and I will determine what your market value is in your personal property, we can run rental comps as well. So it's definitely our goal to get you into an income growing property. We don't want you to be in a negative cash flow. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do here, right? We know that in America, it is the easiest ways to grow wealth is through real estate. And that's not just personal wealth, but it's also generational wealth. So keep that in mind. All right. So tell us what we're looking at here, Amy.
So this is another way to qualify. So what we were talking about a moment ago was just kind of your standard purchase of an investment property, right? We can offset the payment, give you some income there. This type of loan, actually, let's just say you're self-employed, just because that's easy. That's an easy target, right? So we're self-employed. We make a ton, but we write off a bunch. So we show a little, right? So we may not have the income that we actually need to qualify, just period. We can't even qualify for what we already have, right? With what our income is showing, not what we're maybe making, but again, self-employed is just an easy target there because we write off things, right? Our starting number is not quite our ending number when it comes to our income. So that's just a perfect example. I see a lot of people utilizing this option for, because the income from the property itself is all that you have to qualify. So in other words, we anticipate the property to pay for itself. So we don't take any of your other debts into consideration. We don't take your income into consideration. There are, of course, minimum credit score requirements, 20% down for this option. You can kind of see here, it is available for 1 to, again, like I mentioned, up to 4 units. It is available for condos. Excuse me. It's available for most property types. So again, if you are in a new on your job, your commission, you're again self-employed, whatever reason would keep your income from qualifying you for another property, you can always jump into this option, because again, the only income that it's looking at is the property producing income, which again, Amanda, you guys could help them determine what that is. So we would know right out of the gate going into that, what exactly we're looking at and what we can qualify for.
So we have another question in the chat and they want to know, if, for example, they already own their home, like they own a townhome, but they want to move up and keep their current home and rent that out.
Yep.
How can we utilize that so that we can move up?
Yep, you can do that. So when you move out of a property, so that's your departing residence. So we're going to depart our primary and we're going to purchase a new primary. With that said, you can actually kind of the same thing. You can utilize the income from a lease agreement to offset your current mortgage payment. You do have to have a lease in place to be able to utilize that income. But if you don't need that income, or let's say we qualify with both payments, you don't even have to have a lease set up ahead of time. But that lease option would at least help you and enable you to be able to qualify for both at the same time without having to, like you said, sell your current primary. We're going to move out of that one, move into another one. We would either need to qualify with both of those payments or have a 12-month lease agreement in place at the time of closing on the new one.
Okay, awesome. So I understand that you have some real life examples from some clients to share. So we're gonna, if you don't mind, go through those with you. All right, tell us about Rob and Alice.
So our first one is Rob and Alice. So I started working with them back early 2021. They were looking at purchasing a long-term investment. They weren't looking at Airbnbs or anything short-term. They knew they just wanted to kind of grow the value of that property and have it pay for itself, right? So in this example, they purchased the house then for $415,000. today's market, we're anticipating that value to be around $540,000. So right there already, they have made significant, gained significant ground just in equity from an equity position. Even if you back out the 25% that they put down, they're still in a good position. Also, their mortgage payment on that at the time was about $1,616 a month. They're renting that property for $2,800 a month. So in that instance, they actually got a double whammy there, right? Not only are they quickly gaining, or did they quickly gain some equity, but also that mortgage is not only paying for itself, but it's also bringing them monthly cash flow as well. So that's one option that they chose. And then fast forward a little bit later, they actually looked at a short-term investment property. And what they did with that one, let's see, sorry about that. What they did with that property is they purchased it again for around $395. Market value now is $484 approximately, so about $100,000 in equity. That one you can see that's more of your short-term option. So the first one was like a 12-month lease, right? This option again is like your Airbnb or 30-day, 60, 90-day short-term rentals, weekends, whatever that shakes out to be. And you can actually see a significant amount more in cash flow for that property. So again, just depends what the use of the property is for. You can kind of see a good idea of there both. But in both cases, what happened? Never mind the monthly. In both cases, what happened?
They're making money. In both cases, they're making money.
Why? How? Where? Let's say their monthly is zero. They barely making the payment every month. What's still happening?
They're gaining equity
all day long.
Yeah.
Every real estate transaction. Does it bobble around? Sure, of course it does. But at the end of the day, right, at the end of the mile here, we make money. We make it in different ways. And in this instance, you can see we have a couple of different ways. But let's say again that the monthly amounts could bobble around a little bit. But what we're doing is continuously gaining ground in equity. So we're making money, like you said.
That's awesome. And so I'm going to answer a question because I know this will come up. How do we find short-term rentals? And the reality of that is in Nashville and surrounding areas, there are ever changing and ever evolving rules and codes around them because they are still so new to the scene. So if you want to do the short-term rental option, we will help you find that availability. We do have to pull zoning and contact the county and things like that. But those are also awesome options, especially if you want to build both short-term wealth and long-term wealth with your equity. All right, who we have next?
The next one is Ron and Betty. So we did a couple of transactions for them, you can see. So their initial plan was to sell their property. So they originally called their realtor and said, hey, market's doing its thing. We really want to make some moves. We feel like we got a good amount of equity. We could buy something else, get our payment down. The market's great for that right now. So let's do that. The realtor did their magic and said, look, let's do this. Let's run some different numbers. I think they looked around for just a quick hot minute and, it didn't just fall right into their laps, right? And so he said, let's do this. What if we make your equity work for you? What if you stay where you are? They really didn't hate their house. They just thought, we got a lot of equity. Let's move, right? Yeah. How many people did that over the last couple of years, right? Wow. So, or are looking to do it now because there's still a ton of equity. So they said, let's do this. Let's not move. Let's tap into that equity and let's get you some cash flow. Let's start making you some money with that equity. Instead of you just saving a little bit on your payment because you put a big chunk down, let's actually have that money make money for you, right? So they went into this with, okay, let's do it. So we go in, we do a cash out refinance. And one thing I will say too, at that time, the value was approximately $650 for their house. Fast forward now, the value is about 1.1. That's how much equity growth they gained just from the time they thought they wanted to sell to the time we look back and they didn't really sell. They ended up not selling. But we took out a cash out refi, like we talked about earlier. They refinanced their first mortgage. We pulled out $347,600 cash. What are we going to do with that cash? That's a lot of cash, right? Just to pull. And now you got a payment on that, on your new mortgage, on your current home. So what they did first, that we purchased a long-term investment. So they purchased a property, used that 347, put 25% down. And then you can kind of see there, not only did the equity grow, the mortgage is paying 4 plus some, the payment or the rent is paying more, and then the whole payment and then some on that in that instance. So making money, covering the payment, making money, and growing equity. A few months later, we found another one. Again, use that same 347.5, the difference in that, what was left, purchased another one, did the same thing. You can see there, market rent's over $1,000 a month, more than what their payment is, and they're growing equity. And then the last one, they ended up using the remainder of their funds, and they purchased one more. Same thing. You know, all of their process was not the Airbnb, not the short term. They were more interested in the long-term gain. They just wanted to make sure it paid the payment, right? They didn't want to come out of pocket any more money monthly. They needed these 3 mortgages to not only, the goal was for these 3 mortgages to not only pay for themselves, but if you do the math, those 3 mortgages also pay for his primary mortgage. So he literally went from, you know, not owning one property with a better payment, but paying it himself, to owning 4 properties, a ton of equity, and they all pay for themselves. So effectively, he doesn't even have a mortgage payment today that he's paying. His renters are not only paying his investment mortgages, but also his primary.
That's awesome. We have one more, and these were our clients. So tell us all about it.
So these were, again, similar situation. We refinanced their current home. They wanted to get that payment down, and they wanted to purchase some properties to have their home paid off for quickly. So they opted to put their primary mortgage on a 15-year. Right? It's gonna make our payment more. We're a little nervous about that. We're not real happy about that payment going up, but we have a plan. We're not going to be making our payment. Same kind of as the last scenario there. Their goals were to purchase as many properties as they could with the equity that they had in their current home. They actually had already in place a home equity line of credit for their primary. So while you don't see it here, that's because it was pre-existing, right? They had taken it out before, paid it off at one point, and just tapped back into that again to start with their first purchase. So again, here you can see they not only made equity from the time they purchased it to now, getting well over the market rent is well over their mortgage payment. They're making $1,000 a month on that payment alone, on that house alone. And then they purchased a short term. You can see there that was actually a lake house. So they purchased a lake house. So again, any type of property goes, right? So this particular one is a lake house, and they purchased a lake house, and they're short-term renting that one. So you can see the cash flow there pays for the entire balance on their primary already, right? We do it again, another short-term. That one I believe was like a cabin, like a, I'm gonna call it a mountain house. Like what is that? It's not a beach house. It's not a lake house, but it's in the mountains, just a home in the mountains. Yeah. And that's what that second one was. So they have a lake house. They have a home in the mountains. They're doing the same thing with that one. They're turning and burning that on the short term, paying for it, growing equity. They did it again and again. So I could go through those details again, but you can kind of just take a minute. You can kind of see the equity growth and I'll tell you what happened is with them, it kind of snowballed, right? They saw the potential quickly and jumped on that quickly. And they did it in a time when it wasn't so easy to buy a home. There wasn't a lot of homes on the market, right? And that's where you guys dug in. Okay, we're going to find you the home, right? All you need to know is what their plan is. And then you guys jump right in and find them exactly what they're looking for. And that's what happened here. So
what's our first step? We are ready. We know we have equity because Whitney and Amanda send out our equity letters every year. What do we do first? How do we get started?
Yeah. So the first thing I recommend is call me. Call a lender, right? Find out what your options are. It's great to start looking. It's great to get excited about looking, but it doesn't do us a lot of good to start looking until we know what we're working with, right? So I would say
know what we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times we think we know
exactly
what we don't know. So there's that. So I would say definitely reach out to your lender. Find out, happy to run scenarios for you. Obviously, there's no charge, no cost for that, right? We don't have to dig in even terribly deep on the surface surfaced to find out where you are and if it's worth pursuing. Few questions, quick Q&A with you. We can know pretty quick. Okay, yeah, let's dive deeper, right? Once we know how much equity we have to work with, we talk through what that will look like for you payment wise. Are we comfortable there? Are we, what are all our numbers? And that every person's going to be a little bit different. Everybody's situation and circumstances are always a little bit different. Even if your neighbor just did it, yours are going to be different. So just know that. And then find out where we are. And then once we know how much money we have to work with, we know how much cash we have in hand, then we can turn over to you guys and go, okay, we know we have to have, or our plan is for, you can do as little as 15% down. So let's just say we have 15% down. Our equity allows us to pay that closing and have a little cushion for some reserve, just so we don't use it all, right?
Right.
Then we're able to let you guys know, here's the price point, right? Here's
Where we need
where
to be,
that, because we have to kind of back into it. We have to know how much we're working with money wise, then we can back into what price point we can afford and not have to come out of money or come out of pocket any more than what our equity allows. And then you guys have that price, you jump in and can start to look for that property.
That's awesome.
And
I love that you said, oh, sorry, go.
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I love that she said, even if your neighbor just did it, because we've like, it is such a personal, it is nothing about it is
The same.
day in and day out. Like it is very specific. So yeah.
It's so relative to each person's individual situation.
Right.
Yeah, and also, how can you figure out, what you're looking for if you don't know a price range that you're looking in? It feels like a waste of time.
It is a waste of time.
Yeah, because if you can't buy it, why look at it,
So not only is it a waste of time, it's also a waste of energy because we see a lot of things that we love, can't buy it.
Yes,
So
and
why
that's the
not
worst.
start? Yeah. So why not start looking at what, obviously we're all going to click around, right? Because that's the normal today. But before you get too involved in that and fall in love with a price point or a house, and we only like houses in this range, don't do it. Don't do it. Find out what you can do. It's so much easier to like and love what you can do than to be disappointed in what you can't, or worse, think this is all we can do and this is where you're looking, when in reality maybe we could have hit a different mark for you. So definitely always don't assume, again, the neighbor thing. I say that, people always say, well, my neighbor just did this, or their house was worth that, or they were able to do this. Their circumstances are not yours. So I would say dive in, figure out what you can do. Let's nail that number down. How much equity do we have? You guys are there for it in that regard. Run the numbers on the loan, see what that looks like, what the best options are. Another thing I'll ask you guys too, because I get asked this a lot too. When should I start looking? So we're talking, it's early stages on my end, right? Can we go look at houses? Can we make an offer? When should we start looking? What would you guys recommend as far as when someone should actually start looking?
So we always prefer to start looking after we have a pre-approval in hand. So this is not a pre-qualification, a pre-approval, which means Amy has run your credit, has checked your income. She's been working with us to find out how much equity you have in your home. And she has then offered a letter that says, hey, they're approved and they're going to close pending, extenuating circumstances. Pre-qualification letter basically just means that you've talked to someone and you told them what you have. They haven't done any checking, and then they gave you a pre-qual. So the pre-approval is pivotal in this process, especially when you're looking at investment properties as a first-time investor, because long-term investors, they know what they're doing. So they know how to compete in that market. But yeah, so Amy, tell us, how can we get a hold of you if we want to start the process?
Yeah, so you can call me, you can text me, you can email me, I've got my website will give you that information too. You can do most everything online, but you can always call me. I guess, Amanda, are we going to put our information here? Also
put it in the chat. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So call, text, I'm usually available. Days, nights, weekends. I try to be available when you are, because I know people work, schedules are weird sometimes. So don't ever feel like, oh, it's too late or it's a Sunday. That's what I'm here for that, because that's when you're available. So we want to work, as best as we can to be reachable for you in your free time.
For sure. So we can put the information in the chat to reach out to Amy, but if you are watching the replay of this, we will also have our contact information at the end of the video. So make sure you go to the end of the video and reach out to us if you need anything. Whitney and I are always here for you. We love you guys, and we are excited to help you build generational wealth because it's just so important. So, all right.
Absolutely.
That's it, guys. We appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Amy and Whitney.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll hear from you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Amy.